so all the 17 legislators, they're bipartisan. So you also have Republican legislators supporting this. And how expensive do you think a lawsuit would be, actually? I know that it is very curious. I would be like to get some kind of survey from folks living in South Dakota where they stand on this. Speaking to citizens of the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe, they told me that there is some support from the county sheriff for the checkpoints as well. They're working collaboratively at the county level with the tribe. Does seem like there is some, I don't know how much the governor's position reflects the actual her voters, or whether, as this article said, that she's been advised to seek conflict and to engage in political battles whenever possible by Corey Lewandowski. Could you speak to that? Sorry.
So I saw the same article that you saw. So other than through the media or rumors, we haven't got any word that is actually the case. So I think that I have access to the same information that everybody else does on her future plans and what she's getting advised on. But I do wish that the approach would have been different. I think it would have definitely been more beneficial to have a working relationship to identify kind of what the checkpoints are actually doing and not hearsay, because I know that there was a hotline set up and people could call in to give concerns or complaints, and it was several people that were probably advocating very strongly, saying that they felt that the checkpoints were a violation. They were non-natives living on a reservation, and they felt that it was a violation of their U.S. Citizen rights. So kind of how it went from that to where it is now, it accelerated very quickly, and we're not really sure how that happened.
People, a lot of right-wing conservative folks actually going out with guns to state capitol buildings, as we saw in Michigan, and even here I live in Portland, Oregon. So even here in the Oregon State Capitol and in Olympia, Washington, which are blue states, you actually are seeing armed resistance. And I saw Ammon Bundy doing a call out in Idaho, basically trying to get people to sign an agreement that they would actually come out with guns to basically defend the right of people to defy the governor of Idaho's stay-at-home orders. Is there any kind of fear? Do you get that, from non-native South Dakotans? Do you get that sort of feedback? Are you hearing anything like that?
Well, the feedback that I'm getting kind of across outside of, I would say, Indian country, is that they are appreciative that the governor has put the quote unquote common sense provisions and not having the shelter in place enforced, and giving more autonomy to municipalities to do what's in their best interest of their community, whether like concerning closures. So you do have, I believe, maybe fundamental clash of possibly worldviews, and also how it's affecting people of color at a higher rate. So there's this dichotomy of constitutional rights, as well as like we're in a pandemic, and within our community, it could spread like wildfire, and our survival depends on this, stopping this virus from coming into our communities. So because it has disproportionately hit people of color, they don't have the same experience that we are having. And so their focus is among constitutional rights, not wanting to be told that they have to wear masks. And so it's not necessarily a fear that we have that we'll see similar things in South Dakota that we have in other states. One, because we were never locked down. We were never, businesses were advised to limit, but there wasn't the same provisions. And two, I know that their priority is constitutional rights, and feel that this falls on the individual versus the collective of making sure our communities. And that is why there's the big difference between the tribes taking these precautions, because it is in the best interest of our health and welfare. And there's just very different experience and underlying economic and health issues.
Reporting from the Navajo Nation that one of the reasons why they have such high numbers is not only because of health issues, and but also because they're doing more testing. I know that an article came out saying that if the Navajo Nation was a state, they would have the third highest testing rate in the country. They've tested 4 times the per capita population that the state of Arizona has. So it's very hard to compare these numbers. And also, every state does their numbers differently of the reported COVID deaths. And some states are obviously not actually, they have huge spikes in their death rates, and that must be due to COVID, but it doesn't reflect in their COVID numbers because they are simply not identifying these folks as having died from COVID-19. So the numbers that we're dealing with are very preliminary almost, and they're hard to compare to one another, community to community. And I would like to say that the Navajo Nation has been very open with their numbers, very honest with their numbers, and have somehow gotten a hold of a lot of testing, and so they are doing that to a very high rate. What do you think that there's any danger of that? I know that the Navajo Nation, there was a white man in Page, Arizona, who was arrested for issuing call-outs to kill Navajos because they're 100% infected with COVID-19. And so there's sort of these border towns, this plays into, sort of theories of racial superiority they have, of the danger of tribes. And do you see any danger of that happening, or do you feel that the relationships are different in South Dakota?
Well, I think Chairman Fraser had said it best when he responded, saying that right now it's very heightened levels of stress and uncertainty. And so for Governor Noem to come out and position and state things in a certain way, it is damaging to almost create that type of environment. So that is something we're trying to mitigate. And I think that the tribes have done a great job, as stated, that the county sheriffs are involved in this. And so there is maybe a lack of understanding of exactly what's going on at the checkpoints, and they are getting calls from individuals that have possibly sensationalized what's happening there, or that they felt that they were being targeted for being non-native. So I think that that's where the danger lies of creating something that pits natives against non-natives, and that's one of the things that Chairman Fraser, as well as President Bear Runner, has said explicitly, that this is not about race. This is about our tribal nation's sovereignty, keeping our people safe, and acting in a way that's in our best interest. We're not trying to impede anyone else's rights. We're just doing what is important to us because these underlying health issues that exist. And I think that it's important for us to really assess, have this moment of, a pause to look at. Now we're exerting a certain level of sovereignty that may have not been seen in the past. Let's take that into our diets, our voting, our community relations within our communities, of really taking this moment to addressing some of these underlying health issues within the community, looking at our food sources. One of the things that make us, there's economic overlays to this whole situation, which then also has racial and ethnic overlays as well. But what are the things that we can take and change within our community? Making sure that we're not leaving for 95% of our food sources are off reservation. We have land bases. So you see a lot of those changes taking place. And I think this gave us an opportunity to really focus on that. So, we just have to survive this, keep our elders safe, because there are culture barriers, our language, fluent language speakers, and we have been revitalizing and putting a lot of time, resources, and focuses on that. And so we just want to protect them and be able to have this opportunity to really change the way we live and addressing some of these underlying and economic discrepancies that exist.
I just did a call out for more questions, and I think someone asked, has there been any reports of children with the mutated version of COVID-19 here in South Dakota? And then a question about how contrasting the closure of roads with DAPL, and all that stuff blocking the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe.
We have not seen any of the mutated versions of the, I guess, COVID effects. One of the things that I recently heard is that kids who were exposed to it then go on to have some of these that mutated version, and our children our testing is low, but we do not believe that the children in our community have been exposed to it. But that would also lead to why it's important to make sure that this doesn't make it to the reservation, because I'm sure our children, as much as our elders, are vulnerable to. And then the DAPL, well, that definitely is a concern because of this, people having to shelter in place. There's been reports that although there isn't pipeline construction, that there may be pre-activities going on. But I think that that's something to be aware of and enlighten and know that any type of agreement sets precedences. But again, our chairman and our president, Chairman Fraser and President Bear Runner, are very, they're not going to be easily duped and are aware and acting accordingly with all these different political issues in mind.
I have just one more question really quickly. With more environmental rollbacks during the crisis, are there other assaults on tribal sovereignty by multinational corporations? Could the governor's attack be an attempt to reduce capacity to respond to sovereignty infringements? Kind of, I don't know. That's sort of speculative, isn't it? We don't really know what the governor is trying to do here.
Well, there's no question why Indian nations and Indian peoples are always a bit suspicious. In 1886, the U.S. Supreme Court said, and I think this is an exact quote, that often the deadliest enemies of Indians are the inhabitants of the states where they're located. So we are always ever vigilant because we just know our past and we're worried about the future. And a disease like this, when Indian country and Indian peoples have survived or not survived very well, smallpox, measles, etc. This is really, you can understand why the tribal governments are so concerned and are so vigilant. And instead of being attacked for this, it is wonderful that they're making these extra efforts to try to prevent this virus from reaching Indian reservations.
Great, thank you.
So I think that he addressed it spot on, is that everything, we've just got to be vigilant and aware and informed and know that something will have implications in other ways. So when we make a decision, that taking in consideration, how does this not only impact what's going on right now, but future generations, and what other laws or regulations will this impact?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I would like to thank all of you for being on Pollen Nation's podcast on coronavirus in Indian country, and thank you for all your work. And we will be doing some follow-up reporting on this as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wasting